last year, going up to our lodge leadership retreat, sounded his praises for his ability to spin a yarn. I was reminded people of what he did when we were down at the Grand Lodge of Oregon. He was asked to speak, and he starts telling this story. And I don't even remember what the story was, but the punchline was perfect. He gets to the end, and he threw the beavers and the ducks under the bus simultaneously without any of them knowing it was going to happen. It was just fabulous. Past Grandmaster Barry, thank you for coming. You're going to present part of what you were going to do at our lodge leadership retreat, and I'm very much interested in seeing what other people have to say about your speech. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you, Most Worshipful. In fact, you know, I can reprise that just so you understand that. You know, I know what college rivalries are like in the United States. You know, so I mean, coming from Canada, I had to say, listen, my brothers, don't hold it against me, but Canada's national animal is a beaver. But you know, rather than get into a discussion about that, I'm just going to duck the question altogether. So, you know, I covered off both the rivalry quite nicely there. So okay, so the topic this evening is improving the return on your investment. And really the short answer here that we've discovered in British Columbia is to collect enough data that provides enough intelligence for brethren to make some decisions, particularly about how they would like their lodge to operate. So you're seeing the screen with the BC and Yukon flag there? Everybody sees that all right? Yep, okay. So why is that not, hang on a second here. There we go. So, you know, here in Washington, of course, there's, again, this very large rivalry, and I do need to address these things because, you know, people need to relax, and, you know, I don't want any online fighting or anything like that. But I have to tell you, I live in North Vancouver, which is very close to the wilderness. And last week, there's a green belt right across the street from my house. And out of this green belt walked this enormous cougar. I'm telling you, the cougar was so large, my neighbor said to me, my God, that cougar is kind of big and muscly and everything else. He's kind of husky for a cougar, don't you think? Okay, well, that didn't go over so well. So, you know, as we say in Canada, it's time to get cracking and get on with the presentation. So I was, you still see that all right? You see there's a graph there with all sorts of doodads on it. You can see that? Yeah, okay. Because I've got to get over onto the script side of things here. So, you know, I was recently reviewing my investment portfolio, and it served as a reminder that, you know, I haven't always made the wisest or the best investments. And even though, you know, I get a monthly report and there's lots of data on that, I hadn't always monitored my returns as vigilantly as I should have. So, but at least I made an investment. And, you know, I may have to go back to work to keep the lights on in the house, but I was able to, when I would attend to it, to see how I was progressing towards my Masonic goals. So, just have a little technical challenges here. So I was thinking about investments and returns on investments and so on and so forth. And of course, in Freemasonry, we all know that you know, if you don't engage yourself in the craft, you're not really going to receive a lot of the benefits. And so what got me thinking, this was a couple of years ago now, is how we could help brethren gauge how they're getting, what their return is in their practice of Freemasonry, particularly in their lodge. And so, you know, having an opportunity as an elected Grand Lodge officer, I created some feedback groups. There were 3 groups. There was a really young group of Freemasons under 30, a group of Freemasons under 50, and a group of Freemasons over 50. The 3 groups, and they were from all around the jurisdiction. There was about 35 or 40 of them altogether. And so I engaged them in some conversations around some thoughts and ideas that I had, largely around this whole idea of getting a return on your Masonic investment. It was a really, really useful and productive exercise as far as I was concerned. I was getting lots and lots of feedback from them. And so it helped to sort of formulate some of the thoughts and ideas that we'll talk about a little bit later. But one of the things that came through really, really clearly from these brethren was that they wanted more than out of Freemasonry than getting together once or twice a month, going through a bit of ritual and kind of engaging in some Masonic discussion. They were really looking for something that enabled them to incorporate more of the Freemasonry, to practice out of the lodge, that statement that we always reference. So they were really looking for more out of Freemasonry than they were receiving. So, you know, the primary purpose of the craft, and I think we stated in our lodges in different ways, but basically to practice out of the lodge those excellent precepts that are ever inculcated in it. That's what these guys were really looking for. And so it became, again, for me, it was kind of driven into me that I need to find a way that we can help these brethren really make sure that they're getting the kind of Freemasonry that they want, that they're getting the kind of return that they want, that they're able to voice their concerns, if you will, or their ideas in a more substantial way, if you will. So, you know, after 32 some odd years in the craft, and having served in the most important job, in my opinion, in any jurisdiction, that is the Grand Director of Ceremonies, which in your jurisdiction would be the equivalent of, I think, the Grand Marshal. Listening to feedback from, I came to a number of conclusions. Freemasonry exists solely through the permission of the brethren. And sometimes that permission is removed, and sadly to say, as past Grand Masters will attest, sometimes for the most trivial of reasons. I discovered from these feedback groups a number of brethren who were a bit frustrated that the promise of the craft, as they were informed originally, was not being realized. Newer brethren were looking for more than just coaching on how to prove up for the next degree, and wanted a greater understanding of Freemasonry and how they could more readily internalize the teachings. And in order to build the craft, again, based on these conversations that I was having with these brothers, we needed some data to be able to articulate what was needed and how to move forward with the next steps. So the basis of for building the craft rests an investment of time and energy and commitment by individual brothers, and that the results of the internalization of our Masonic tenets and principles become self-evident. So just for a moment, let's just pause for a second. And we don't need to articulate this, but what I'd like you to do is to think a little bit for a second and finish the sentence. I am a Freemason because. And I'm wondering if the answer, the completion of that sentence was similar to what you thought about when you first walked through the west gate of the lodge. Is it the same? I know for me, I'm a Freemason now because I need to continue to internalize and practice the tenets and principles in the craft as a part of my life. I can fall off the table fairly easily, and the craft keeps me grounded and focused. So every Master Mason follows essentially the same process. Something or someone attracts them to the craft. There's an induction process that takes place. And the brother is initiated and hopefully passed and subsequently raised. As his experience of the craft grows, he faces that moment or moments when he must decide how or if he wishes to proceed with the craft. So if he's not experiencing an expected return for his investment, that's kind of the beginning of the end, if you will. And so a really simple graphic that we use as part of our membership development process. You know, and really what I'm talking about here is the endpoint there where the decision to remain is made. You know, we're not losing as many brethren now as we used to. There's some foundation programs that have been developed that are increasingly being used, which is basically front-end loading the process so that before a brother gets to the west gate, a lot of this stuff has been sorted out. 6-step to initiation. I think you use that in your jurisdiction. Is that correct? Yep. And that's been a huge benefit for us. So we needed to be effective, we needed to be able to generate some useful information that helped us to be able to determine what was working, what wasn't working, and when some of these resources were being applied, we're getting a benefit. In other words, the brethren were feeling that the time they were investing in their lodge was being returned to them in a better Masonic experience, if you will. So with this real simple graphic, there's a much more detailed and complicated one that I would use in the larger presentation that gets into some of the reasons why a brother might move on from the craft. But you know, really, where you have been successful and we have been successful is that we've front-end loaded before the west gate. And you know, in our jurisdiction, the 6-step plan for us is a potential brother does not receive a petition for initiation until such time as he's made a commitment to the lodge and the lodge has made a commitment to him. And when that happens, then the petition gets signed. And since we started doing that, it's been just absolutely outstanding benefits. So one of the things that we wanted to do was generate some data so that we could start to analyze how effective some of the approaches that we were taking were going, the better to inform future practice, but also to be able to say to our brethren, look, if your lodge engages in this kind of activity, if you take on the 6-step plan, you know, your membership loss for new brothers will drop by 30, 40, 50%. We don't have enough data yet to be able to quantify that, but that's what we're working on at the moment. So when we look at things like membership retention, these are the foundation programs that we've identified that we use and encourage lodges to undertake. And I can just really quickly go through these. The LEAP is the Lodge Education and Action Program, and it's basically a series of requirements that a lodge needs to undertake. And essentially, they're all the components of what a successful lodge would be. They do that. They report their progress to the district deputy grand master, and at the end of the Masonic year, they will receive a LEAP certificate. And there's a LEAP certificate with distinction, which requires a few extra things. But it's basically, you know, all of the components that you would consider a successful lodge would be undertaking. The long-term plan is a fairly self-explanatory one, 6-step plan, which you know about. We've been tracking this data now this is the second year we've done it. 6-step plan, the previous year was 30%. And so more and more lodges are engaging in this, and the retention rates in those lodges are rising. Formal mentoring program, again, 30%. That's been pretty constant. New member pathway is an excellent program that works between the entered apprentice and fellow craft and master mason, and then it's taken up by an additional program called Toward the East, which then goes from a master mason, basically leading brethren towards more leadership positions. Formal education program, running close to 60%. Again, the previous year was like 40. Officer training, we haven't measured that yet because we just created that. So in another year, we'll have 3 years of data, and now we'll be able to track things and show some trends and things of that nature. So, so we have data. We're getting some additional feedback on performance through the Secretary's database of the Grand Lodge office, which tracks all the basic numbers of, you know, how many petitions were received, how many EAs, fellow crafts, master masons, how many demits, how many deaths, how many suspensions for non-payment of dues, and so on and so forth. So the demits and the non-payment of dues is dropping for the last couple of years. Generally in British Columbia over the years, we've replaced the brethren who passed to the Grand Lodge above with new master masons. And then the net loss which occurs is from demits and suspensions. So one of the things then that if the brethren are expressing some concerns, there's not a universal satisfaction, particularly in their lodge. We're wanting to engage them. We're providing some data. We're wanting to engage in some processes that will allow them to voice their concerns, make their suggestions, and try to help build the lodge. So we need to give them some tools. And one of the tools that we created, and this came out of a group that I put together a task force group that I put together with the Grand Master's permission when I was a senior Grand Ward. I started working on this idea of, let's provide a mechanism for brethren to provide feedback in a formal and measurable way, if you will. So started working on that with this group, and we came up with this, what we call it's a jurisdictional health assessment program. And it's kind of multi-phased. I'm only going to talk about the lodge portion of this tonight, because this can go on for a little bit of time, and it's not complicated, but it takes a while to explain. But so, you know, we're looking for some tangible ways to measure how brethren are feeling about the crafts. And so there's three parts to it. There's the survey of the brethren, which is a battery of about 35 questions that ask kind of the basic thing. We get all the demographic data up front. We've got ages, how long you've been in the craft, and so on and so forth. And then basically ask a number of questions around how you're feeling about Freemasonry in general. This is not lodge specific, this is just Freemasonry in general. Then the second phase is we go to the lodge health assessments, which is lodge specific, and we'll talk a little bit more about some of the detail on that in a moment. From that, there's a profile that gets generated for the lodge, and there's seven competencies, 7 components of a Freemasons lodge that get measured through this exercise, and a profile is created, and from that profile, relative strengths and areas that need improvement in each lodge are identified. So once that becomes known, then the third part is there's a strategic planning process, and that comes about at there's three different versions of this. There's a dead simple, a kind of a fill in the blanks, and then if you've ever done any strategic planning in any kind of organization, it's that kind of a format, which is the third one. So the idea is get a taste from the brethren about what they're thinking, gets them thinking, gets them talking. The second phase is lodge specific. And then the third phase is taking the results of the lodge assessment and doing something with those to improve in the areas that have been identified. Now, all of that process basically takes about 9 or 10 months for that to unfold. So, and we've done that cycle once completely, and then we did the survey of the brethren earlier this calendar year, and then, of course, with the pandemic, we haven't been back yet. So we're going to talk about specifically about the lodge health assessment. Okay, so again, this is brethren getting together, going through a process that identifies the relative strengths and weaknesses, or areas that need improving in the opinion of the brethren of that lodge. Go through that process. Now, this takes a little bit of courage, as you can imagine, on the part of a worshipful master. And so initially, it took a while to explain to everyone exactly how this was going to work and what the output was, and how, you know, if you really care about your lodge, you might want to know what the brethren are thinking. So we had, at the time, we had 136 lodges, so we had 122 of those lodges undertake this process. So that was pretty good. That was pretty good return. Out of the 14 lodges that didn't undertake that, 4 of them were in the process of shutting down. One of them in a remote part of the province. I don't think had met for a couple of years, but hadn't told anybody. So we got most of the practicing lodges. So here are the 7 competencies. These are the 7 competencies that we've identified in our jurisdiction, and that we basically engage brethren in a discussion on each of those processes. There's a series of questions that basically get answered, and the answers that are selected that end up creating a profile for that particular competency, if you will. So the preferred way to do this, and the way that we did it when we ran through this in 2018 was, it was an in-person lodge meeting, promoted well in advance. And basically a brother who had some skill in this was basically selected to facilitate the discussions. And the model that was used was consensus. The brethren in the end had to agree to select one of the alternatives for each of the questions. Now, the reason that we set it up that way is because it generated a lot of discussion, as you can imagine. I saw 4 of these, and I can say generally things like education and fellowship, for example. Generally speaking, the brethren that had been in the lodge longer and had more Masonic experience thought that both of those areas were going quite well. The newer brethren didn't agree. So, as you can imagine, and this was a fairly contentious issue in my mother lodge, as a matter of fact. And so it was quite a lengthy discussion until they finally reached a consensus, begrudgingly in a few people's parts. So what we have then is, again, a series of questions, facilitated discussion, and this is an application. So this happens in real time. So you can load this up. You've got a big screen in your lodge. Basically, you can go through this process, answer the question, and the result, after you finish the competency, the value for that competency is registered and it pops up on the screen. Okay, so we have this. I have no idea how this works, but I was told that if you take your phone, or if you've got another device that you can use, you can face this QR code, and it will take you. It's going to take you to the application. So I know some of you have that. And unfortunately, I can't get this to come up on my laptop. So at the same time, or I haven't been able to figure that out. So what I'm going to do is, here's the first question. Does your lodge have a lodge education officer? And so those are the alternatives. You either do or you don't. Okay. And so, I mean, obviously, if education is an important part of your lodge, having an education officer or somebody designated in that function is a distinct advantage. Which brings us to the education presentations, and this is just a quantifiable number. Do you have a mentor program? I'm sorry about the split screen there. And if you recall, when we went back in BC and Yukon for the reports that we used from this last Masonic year, it was like 29% of lodges had a mentorship program, which is pretty important for newer brethren, as I think you could realize. Ritual delivery, who's doing it in the lodge. And Ashler College is a specific higher learning entity that's in BC and Yukon. It's actually spelled wrong here. It's Ashler as in AR. If you wanted to check that out, by the way, you know, go on to our website and freemasonry.bcy.ca and look up Ashler College. It's a very, very cool thing. So basically the process would be, the question pops up, the alternatives are there, the discussion takes place, an alternative is selected that creates a value. At the end of that competency, at the end of education, then there's a value out of 100 that pops up. It's not a score, it's a value. And that basically is the competency measurement for that particular lodge in education. And so you can see, you know, we go through, again, all of the different competencies have a series of questions. And again, the real value in this is the discussion that takes place around deciding which is the perfect answer, or which is the correct answer, or the most appropriate answer for that particular lodge. Again, not universally agreed upon initially, but it does take a little bit of work. So those are the questions. And what I hope to be able to do tonight was to show you, you know, the education profile, and then basically with the live link, we would see a result. So what I would be asking you all to do is each of you answer those questions, and that data would then be, the application would take that and formulate at the end a response for each of the questions, and then we'd get the result. So sadly, that's not going to work. So I'm going to stop this one and try to go back to this one. So at the end of this, those are the 7 competencies. You know, 100% ring on the outside and increasingly going down. And so what we did when we did this in 2018 with the lodges, we said, okay, you don't have to share your results with your district deputy if you don't want to. Well, everybody, either they missed it or they agreed to do it. I was seeing the results because the application had to be processed. And so I was seeing the results. And in fact, just back up here for a second. Right up here, these are the 7 competencies. These are all the lodges by district that participated in it. And so I could look across and, you know, the greens, we'd have the different colors here. I'm trying to remember which was which now. I think to me, it seems to me that the darker reddish colors ones were the ones that had values above 85. And that's important because a little bit later I'll explain what we actually did with it. So here's the graphic for each of the districts. And so, you know, we call them district deputy grand masters in BC. We had 24 of them at the time. And so there were a few side bets going on here between them about, you know, who's going to have the highest ratings and so on and so forth. The different color schemes there are the different competencies. All right, so we put them all together, and then it creates an overall value for that particular district. Okay, so then, so there's, you know, this is what what a lodge would see. They would see this spider diagram, spider web diagram, would come with their results. So they could see how they were doing. The district deputy would receive this one, which shows all of the lodges in his jurisdiction and which lodges maybe needed some help. For example, the lowest rating here was one particular lodge had a 10% rating for planning. So clearly it's one of those lodges where a plan consists of 5 minutes before the meeting starts, we'll figure out what we're going to do kind of plan, you know? So, so you could, you know, the district deputy can, I mean, literally look at this and then subsequently dig into the results and see areas where he may need to provide some assistance. So the real benefit, one of the real benefits that came out of this was, as I showed you, the report. I got the report. The group that was running this application got the report that showed the results for all the lodges, and so I went through all those results. Took me some time, as you can imagine. I selected the 10 best lodges for each of those 7 competencies. Some lodges were in the top 10 for more than one competency, as you can imagine. And then I communicated with them through the district deputy and asked them to detail what it was that they did that their brethren felt was resulted in such a high rating for Masonic experience or charity or education or community awareness. You know, what is it that you did? Describe what you did. And then we put all those in a link that I created for our website, Successful and Best Practices. And again, if you go to freemasonry.bcy.ca, on the landing screen, if you just punch the Grand Lodge office button, our website's being changed, but for now it's a very passive landing page, if you will. But if you just punch the Grand Lodge office, you'll see Successful and Best Practices on the bottom of that page. You can punch into that, and you'll be able to see what we did. So the idea that we had here is that, and we publicized this and shared it with the brethren. So if you got your competency in education is not very good, go and look at the, I didn't get 10 out of 10. I got 5 or 6 or 7 sometimes. Take a look at the lodges that had the best rating by their brethren for education. Take a look and see what it is that they did. If you want to improve your education, do what they did. Here's the example. So it's not this is not a theoretical exercise. This is a very practical, down to earth, what your brethren in your jurisdiction are doing to get better kind of thing. So successful and best practices. So in the end, what we have found is in the initial stages, the brethren that participated in Lodge Health Assessment, in our second survey of the brethren, we asked them, how did you evaluate that? The evaluation was very, 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 very strong. 80 some odd % of the brethren said it was an excellent exercise and that they felt that they were able to express their ideas and their concerns, and that their lodge had made some changes as a result. So, you know, that's very, very encouraging. By the way, our survey of brethren, we get responses from about 23, 24% of the brethren on those. So, and every lodge in our jurisdiction had somebody take the survey. So we're fairly confident that we've got a nice representation there. So for now, you know, we've got this this system that works over a 9 or 10 month period. As I said, we've gone through one cycle, and the survey portion of the second cycle. We're going to do the lodge health assessment if the lodges go back into session, and right now it's up in the air. Grandmaster is not encouraging lodges to meet in person at the moment. But once we do get back into lodge again, or more and more lodges are using online get-togethers. Our jurisdiction is not permitted to open a lodge online at the moment. We're not satisfied with the security aspects of that. But if we do get to that, and that's the way lodges meet, once they've met for 2 or 3 months, then we're going to roll out the lodge health assessment for the second time. So that's the approach. So we go back to the beginning. We're trying to encourage brethren to make an investment in the craft. So if you make an investment in anything, you want to get a return, but you want to get some reports that tell you how that investment is doing. And if you have some suggestions on how to make that investment better, there's a mechanism that allows you to do that. So that's what this whole process, jurisdictional health assessment, is all about. I've just shown you the lodge health assessment part of it, and it's gone very well. We're very happy with it. It's unfortunate the pandemic came along to basically stop that in its tracks, because really by the time we go through this a third time, I think we'll have a lot of really, really useful data. We'll be able to identify, I think, some trends. 3 years of data, I think, would allow us to do some cause and effect links. So if you use the 6-step plan, you're basically going to have a retention rate above 80%. I just made those numbers up, but in a couple of years' time, we'll be able to have enough information to be able to make those kinds of pronouncements, which again is a way of showing lodges how to move forward the successful and best practices. And so this is all part and parcel of trying to get us all to reach that great lodge of heart's content. Lodge, heart's content. Wouldn't that be wonderful if every lodge could say that? By the way, this is a lodge. It's in, surprise, surprise, Heart's Content, Newfoundland. So this does exist, and I couldn't resist putting it up there. So we've seen some benefits. We've seen some lodges that have taken this on wholeheartedly. I was going to speak to a lodge in Kamloops in April, actually the day before my birthday. I was looking forward to going up there. It subsequently got canceled, but they basically have embraced this. They turned their lodge, turned it on a dime. They're thriving. In the space of 9 months, I think they brought in a dozen candidates. They made some changes. A few of the older guys have stepped back and let some of the newer guys take over. I mean, just everything you can imagine. So anyway, brethren, that's what I had in mind. And again, I apologize for the technical difficulties here in not being able to demonstrate the actual operation of this. It works really, really, really well. And I just one other thing I would add. I mean, we've done surveys and things like that before. I've been in the craft for 30 years. But But generally what's tended to happen is the survey gets done and then nobody ever sees the results. Or the results come out a little bit later, or you know, some of them come, some get, some don't. This application, basically, if you do it live, it shows you the results live, real time. So I think it's one of the things that you know, really impressed the brethren. I mean, there were brethren, there were older brethren that I said, you know, yeah, we've done this kind of stuff before. This is not going to make any difference. This is not going to go anywhere. We'll never hear the results. And even if we do, nobody will ever do anything about it anyway, and on and on and on, the naysayers. And so, you know, I can tell you 122 lodges did it. Of those, I think about 65 or 70 actually did the planning, the follow-up planning piece of it. And so, you know, we've decided that lodges that want to embrace this and roll with it, we're going to work with them. If it's not for you, that's fine. If brethren, you know, in our jurisdictions, we have usually 6 or 7 lodges in a district, and they all talk to one another. So if one lodge all of a sudden is taken off and doing well, the others will probably want to try and emulate that as well. So most worshipful Jim, that's my presentation. I'm interested if there's any comments or questions. Oh, I should say, Grandmaster, if this is something you're interested in a more formal way, let me know, and you know, I'll get you in touch with the brothers that actually do the technical stuff on this. And one of the things that we can do is, you know, we look at the questions and you can modify them. You want to add some competencies, that can all be done so that we can make this work for your jurisdiction and what you need. Grand Lodge of Quebec is using this system. I made a brief presentation at the Conference of Grand Masters of North America, and Francois grabbed me by the tie right afterwards, and he says, we want this. So I put them in touch, and off they went. So with that, you know, any questions or comments or thoughts? I'd be very interested to.
So first things first, Barry, if you'd be so kind, if you can go back to slide number 17.
Slide 17.
That's the one that's got the QR code. That right there. I want to leave that up there so that those brethren with smartphones can can do the QR, so that way they can go in, so that they can go ahead and download the assessment for themselves. So with that, I'm going to open up the floor for questions. I'm going to let me exit out of. Let me get the gallery view here so I can see everyone. Okay, there you go. I can see everyone. Let's see here. Oh, Winton, how are you, sir? Go ahead and unmute your microphone so you can go ahead and ask your question.
Well, everything's wonderful up here in the beautiful Bellingham, and I see we've got one other brother from our little burg up here. A very interesting program, very in depth. It just takes time to go through this, and my screen presentation on this is very small, and my eyesight is not enough to make out some of the finer details on it. So I did take some notes and mark some websites. So maybe if you make the slides available, I can go back and formulate some real questions for you. So
yeah.
So Barry, if you can go ahead and just you can send me that file. You have. I'm gonna drop you a text right now. You can go ahead and send me that file, and I'll go ahead and make sure people get it.
Okay.
Let me quickly finish typing here.
Actually, Jim, my phone doesn't work down here, so
that's okay. You can send it to me when you get back home.
Okay, good, good. Okay.
Send it to me when you get back home. That's just perfectly fine. You know, you know what it is, Bear? It's the exchange rate. That's what it is. You came down here, the exchange rate's throwing you off.
Well, listen, I got to tell you, you know, dollar 40 Canadian, geez, you know, I got to buy a coffee, I got to take out a mortgage, you know? What a fixed income, for God's sake. You know, I don't have a generous military pension like some guys, Jerry.
Oh goodness. So I've got my district deputy on the line, very worshipful Brother Don Downing. Don, what do you think about what do you think about dropping this on your lodges on 13?
I think we might try it. I've downloaded the stuff I need to download here for it, so I will be giving it a try. I'll see what I can do as far as the forms that need to be done. I think it'd be good to try. We're already really involved with our 6-step program, so we'll see what a survey will do for us. Thank you.
Yeah, because you know it's more than just 6 steps. It's that kind of a holistic look at the lodge too. That's kind of a neat thing to look at as well. Oh wait a minute, yes, David.
You know, we have a program that is underutilized, the Lodge Achievement and Outstanding Performance. It's a somewhat similar to your LEAP or to this health assessment program, and the long range planning team several years ago put that together when very worshipful Brother Jeff Brunson was part of that, and it just didn't get legs down here. But as long range planning, a member of the long range planning, if a lodge would ever come to me and say, hey, what do we need to get going? I'd say, well, take this assessment, this Lodge Achievement and Outstanding Performance, and if you complete that, I think you'll have solved your own questions.
Absolutely.
Well,
Grant, go ahead.
Yeah, if I may, most worshipfully, you know, that's the thing. There's been before I ran for the Grand South, I spent quite a bit of time, the better part of a year, researching all kinds of things. I had some ideas. I was looking around to see if other jurisdictions had kind of done some of these ideas. Some of them had, you know, so I came to the conclusion that if you want brethren to make an investment in a craft and you're asking them to do certain things, you better give them the tools to make it happen, and you better give them tools that are intuitive, where the results are clear, that are easily occupied. And I, you know, it just shows you how this works sometimes. We were riding a ferry from Paul River, which is up in the central coast of BC, back to the Sunshine Coast, and I happened to sit down with a brother that had come for the trip. I hadn't met him before. We were chatting, and you know, we just started talking about this idea of quantifying Freemasonry in measurable ways that brethren can use to judge whether or not they're getting what they want out of the craft. He said, "Oh, yeah," he said, "I happen to do that sort of thing for a living," he said. And he's the guy that put this together. So, and David, good to see you on this line as well as the Working Tools podcast.
Yes, most worthwhile. We appreciate it. We talk about you often. How much we've enjoyed your programming and your support of our podcast.
Oh yeah, well, anytime.
Grand Secretary,
you know what would be an interesting podcast?
Uh-oh.
What would be an interesting podcast is to get my colleague, Most Worshipful Brother Jim, and I on at the same time, and we could compare some notes between jurisdictions. That'd be fun.
Nobody would get a word in edgewise.
Okay, Grand Secretary, please save us.
Well, I'd pay to see that. So, most worshipful, again, thank you for doing this. I had the pleasure of seeing this presentation out in South Dakota when you gave it, and I really think that this is important. One of the things that I was thinking about while you were giving this presentation was that now is I think now is a critical time and a great time for our lodges to, our lodges are clamoring to do something during this time because they're not able to meet. And I think this is a time for our lodges to be introspective, because if the trends that I'm starting to see come true after we're able to get back, we're going to have a lot of gentlemen who are seeking to come into our ranks. And I think, I don't think we've ever had a problem attracting men. It's a problem of retaining them. And so this is a great program for our lodges now to perhaps utilize during this downtime in order to assess themselves and prepare themselves for hopefully what we're going to see on the backside of all of this. So thank you again, and it's a great presentation.
Are you seeing the membership retention key indicators on the screen there?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So again, this is some of the data that we've been collecting for the last couple of years. When you go back before 2010, it's kind of sketchy, but I mean, you just looking at this, you can see that we're attracting fewer brethren, but we're losing fewer. Sadly, mortality. I've done my best to not grow up, and from a maturation point of view, I've been extremely successful. Chronologically, I'm failing miserably. There's nothing you can do about the mortality, but certainly, retaining those that you get, can, I think, make a huge difference. So anyway, I just threw that. I didn't throw that one in because I just didn't want to throw too many numbers at everyone. So.
No, but it is important to get a look at that, because at the end of the day, that's why we do these things, to see, okay, are we, yes, we know we're attracting, are we retaining, and if we are retaining, what seems to be the, for lack of a better term, secret sauce, to figure out that to figure that out.
Where I think this is going to eventually lead. We're going to stay with this for hopefully for the next few years. But where this will eventually lead is brethren will, as the data becomes a little more robust and it'll become available for brethren, a brother can look around and he's in a lodge and he's really wants strong mentorship and he wants some lodge education. And he's not getting it where he is. He can look around and look at these results and find a lodge, hopefully in the vicinity of where he lives, that's doing that. And gravitate to those lodges. You've got in Washington, you've got some examples of lodges that were formed because brethren wanted a certain kind of culture. Worshipful Jim, your mother lodge, DeMolay, for example. Most Worshipful Brother Jim's lodge that I visited was a military lodge, and and being in Everett, not Everett, Bremerton area, if I recall, a lot of Navy influence there, which as an ex-naval person myself, appreciated. So, we've got a lodge, a new lodge in British Columbia, Legacy Lodge, where brethren were at the point where they were going to walk away from the craft. And myself and a couple of others happened to become aware of this and encourage them to not walk away from the craft, but to create the kind of lodge that they want. And that's exactly what they've done. Legacy Lodge will receive its charter sometime before the end of this calendar year. And they have a lodge, exactly the kind of lodge that they want. So when they do the lodge health assessment, they have strengths. They had strengths in areas where they wanted strengths. So anyway, sorry, Jim.
No, that was there is something to be said about that. To create that cult, it's the old line. If you want to change something, sometimes you got to do it. You got to create that. Because a lot of the affinity lodges that exist here was because people wanted to have that very similar experience, and that is important. Just got to find out here. I just want to scan the room here a little bit. By the way, Barry, I should ask a question. What are the visitation rules up in BC right now?
The way I'm on a couple of other committees. Grandmaster, just don't think that when your time is up, you can retire and put your feet up and relax.
I'm learning that.
Yeah, they're putting, most virtual gym, you can't sit still long enough to. But,
I'm trying.
Yes. I'm on the protocol committee, and the protocol committee was tasked with developing our infection control plan. And we were very fortunate to be able to tap into a chief epidemiologist for one of the health districts who's a brother. And so we've created an infection control plan. And in that plan, it's possible to meet in person with a number of restrictions in place. But one of the restrictions is no visitors. So at this point in time, you're not able to visit other lodges. So now that may change. As we've done until recently quite well in terms of managing the pandemic. We've loosened things up a little bit, and the 20 and 30 somethings are going crazy, and that's where all of the infections are coming.
So basically, it's right now. It's stay to your own lodge, is what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay. Just thought I'd check on that one for you. So since I know people like to go, eventually they'll open the border, and people I know one of my great joys, as we talked about earlier, was visiting Victoria, Columbia.
Oh yeah.
So hopefully we'll have that opportunity. Hopefully we'll have that opportunity again. I can see I've got some people here that are new to these calls. Let's see. Joshua, Dan, either one of you have any questions? Just kind of waiting for y'all. You can just unmute your mic whenever you're ready. I guess they don't.
Sorry, had to find the button. Awesome presentation. Thank you so much for presenting. No questions at this time.
Okay. Let's see. Dan, if you have anything, just go ahead and pop open, or Nick Franz, if you got anything, go ahead and pop open. If not, I'm going to go ahead and give the last word to the Grand Master. But before I do that, I got two quick commercials. Number one, I want to let everyone know what the schedule is looking like for the upcoming District 13 Zoom calls next Monday, which is the 17th. Very worshipful Brother Jeremy Yielding is going to be joining us, and his topic is going to be the Morgan Affair. Now, if you're even the most remote historian about the fraternity, the Morgan Affair is a seminal event in Freemasonry, especially Freemasonry in the United States. You're going to want to attend that. Jeremy is very knowledgeable in this particular topic, and we're looking forward to what he has to share. What he has to share. So that will be that'll be next Monday, the 17th, and then on the 24th. For those of you in the Scottish Rite or are interested in the Scottish Rite, we get the privilege of having illustrious S. Brent Morris come to share with us about the history of the higher degrees. And that will be on the 24th of August. And maybe you've read the book, The Complete Idiot's Guide to Freemasonry. That's one of Brent's works. Plus, on top of that, Brent has written some very scholarly tomes on Freemasonry and on the Scottish Rite. Brent is also a mathematician by trade. One of his hobbies is recreational mathematics. I have no idea what that means.
Oh man.
I mean, I laugh. I don't have fun with 2 + 2 is 4, but Brent does. So I have no idea what that's all about. So any event, both these, so the 17th and the 24th, both of those start at 7 o'clock. I'm still working on something for the 31st. I may change things up a little bit. Plus, we got some other things coming up in September, but those are two key ones. So again, zoom.district13masons.org. That'll get you to, you know, share it with your friends, because these are two very interesting topics, and we got lots of room in our room for people. Very much Brother Dave Colbeth, can you let us know what's happening on the podcast?
Thank you, Most Worshipful. Yes, little banner action here tonight too. Look at that. So as I mentioned earlier, we're right in the middle of a series with Right Worshipful Brother Moises Gomez, the Grand Historian. He was on District 13 before, and so we've got his comments. The first one is just about him, who he is, and how he came to be a Mason, and his amazing trajectory from as a Mason 2008, and now he's going to be offering himself for the Grand South here in the fall. So he could be Grand Master in 2025.
Which means road trip.
Yes, exactly. And so we're actually, as I mentioned, we're going to do a 3-part series. Normally we do 2 parts, but we had some really great blue room, as we call it, the green room segments. And so I was able to put a couple of 10 or 15 minute just chit chat sessions together and make a show out of it. So we got 3 segments with Moises, and then Worship Brother Ben Stegner from University Lodge 141 is a tattoo artist, and so we have a 2-part segment with him coming up, and we're actually looking for someone to record with us on Sunday. So if you know, maybe we could coerce the Most Worshipfuls, Barry and Jim, and have that dual session. But we're working on the Imperial Potentate as well, so we hope to have the Imperial Potentate on in the next coming sessions.
Oh, that would be great.
Thank
so
you.
Again, just to do Ryan Leonard, Bob Brockman, nice to have you joining us from the other side of the state. Always a pleasure to have our Eastern Washington brethren join us.
Thank you, Most Worshipful.
By the way, how's retirement still kind of fresh to you, huh, Bob?
Yes. What's this, about the 5th month?
Oh man!
Kind of coincides with quarantine.
Your timing is impeccable, sir.
Amazing.
By the way, while I've got you, do you have a question for Barry?
I was just curious how long it took to put the questionnaire, the survey together before you sent it out.
You know, it was, we worked on this for about 14 months. We didn't start with this idea. We started with this idea, but not with this format. And just over a series of meetings Sunday mornings in my house at the kitchen table. You know, we probably had 8 or 9 of these sessions, and then we eventually came around to this whole idea of a more data-based, measurable outcome kind of approach to things. And so once we got to that, it basically took, I don't know, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that, to kind of put the questions together. We each took a competency and fired up some ideas, and then got back together and sent them out to a few trusted individuals with a bit of experience, and said, you know, this is what we're thinking about. Here are the kind of questions they asked. What do you think? And got some feedback from them, and you know, so it did kind of. It kind of evolved that way, but once we kind of nailed the structure, if you will, yeah, it was about a month to put those together.
Cool.
Yeah,
and Ryan, like I said, good to see you. I'm going to turn it over to the Grand Master, but I want to make sure that you, if you had a question.
Thanks. I'm going to have to catch the recording because I was at another Zoom event taking place this evening, so I came in late on this. So.
Well, thanks for checking in with us. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
With that, Grand Master, I turn it over to you for the last word and to send us on our merry way.
Thank you, Most Worshipful Brother Jim, and Most Worshipful Brother Barry. It's always a pleasure to see you. And welcome you to the great state of Washington. DuPont's a nice little town. Too bad that we weren't able to do our Unity March this year, which would have been just about a week ago on Sunday, but with the restrictions, just couldn't do it. Your presentation again is, as always, great. I really appreciate it. And I like Clint said earlier, we enjoyed your presentation in South Dakota, and it sort of fueled my mind. And that was one of the reasons I asked you to speak at the LLR this year. Anyway, again, thank you so much. I hope you'll be, now when you go back home, I understand you have to spend 2 weeks in quarantine.
That's right.
No. I'm sorry, but you know, at least you'll have Ann with you and you'll be okay.
Yes, the lovely truth indeed.
Yes. Again, thank you so much. And brothers, thank you. And I think we had a great opportunity tonight. And for myself and the rest of us, again, thank you, Barry.
Thank you. Thank you, brethren. Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
everyone.
Thanks for the opportunity. Good night.
Thanks,
night.
Forceful. Bye-bye, everyone.